Okay, the Atlas 6 is really, really bad, but I love it. I really love this book. And just bear with me. A little bit of background, I didn't want to read this book. I struggle with YA. I also struggle with dark academia, even though I really shouldn't. And I guess this is dark academia. It's hard to tell because it's so stupid. My friend Maria sent me this book. She loved it, and she said it is brainless fun, it is chaos, it is horniness, it is nonsense, and you'll just enjoy it. And she was exactly right. She sent me this, and it's not good. But that doesn't mean you won't enjoy it. I enjoyed every single page, every single word. It's a really terrible train wreck of a book, but you really, really like it. Kind of in the way that you like bad films. Like for me, schlocky 80s horror films that are either designed to be bad in a kind of camp, self-aware, tongue-in-cheek way, or ones that really tried to take themselves seriously and failed. And this is definitely in the latter. Like, I don't think this book is supposed to be tongue-in-cheek. I think it's completely self-serious. But I still loved it. I still loved everything about it. So I've made a little list of all of the things that I want to mention as I go through why The Atlas 6 is a really bad book that I really, really enjoyed. So I've got a list of reasons why, and I'm just going to run through them. The first thing I put down is read out that one quote. This is the biggest problem with the Atlas 6, is that the language is atrociously pretentious and overblown. There are a million different ways to get tone right in a piece of prose, and typically you've got two different things going on in a novel. You have narration and dialogue, and in this book, the dialogue is pretty solid in the sense that the characters of the Atlas 6 are all angsty, horny, angry, overly intelligent, academic teenagers. I think they're teenagers. They sound like teenagers. And the dialogue kind of matches that. It definitely lives up to what the characters are portrayed as. But the pretentiousness of the prose, of the narration, is just unforgivable. So I'm going to read out a quote, and then I guess I should actually talk about what the Atlas 6 is. But this is a random line from pretty early in the book, and I think it beautifully sets up why this is such a train wreck, and why it is kind of embarrassing, and also why it's so fun to read for those reasons. To suffer something as backward as the unsophistication of boundless flame was troublingly biblical. What the fuck does that mean? What does any of that mean? What does... Oh my god. To have the confidence to write a line like that, I could never. Who could ever? Olivie Blake did. I thought it was Olive for ages. It's incredible. It's incredible, that line. I've read it and read it over and over again, and I just can't get enough of it. It is perfectly emblematic of the tone and the language of the Atlas 6. Now, like with so many books, especially YA books, that pretentious, nonsensical, overblown, hyperbolic language goes away gradually. Because quite often, it seems like authors put so much into the first few chapters to try and get the tone right and the voice and sound really good and impress their agent that they're trying to get a deal with, I guess, in the first few chapters. And then it kind of calms down. But it's always just thrown in the first few chapters. And that line is just the best example of that, of Olivie Blake trying to sound really, really good, really smart. And then she kind of calms down. In case you don't know what the Atlas 6 is, it is a piece of urban YA fantasy pseudo-dark academia. As this sticker says here, it is a TikTok sensation. This sticker also is part of the cover. I cannot remove it, and I hate that. I don't go on BookTok. But people love the Atlas 6. It is the story of 6 people, the Atlas 6, who are all very gifted magicians. Or I think they're called medians. I've already forgotten. In a world where a small percentage of the population has magical powers, kind of like them Harry Potters or the X-Men. A small percentage of us are magic and can go to magic universities, etc. The magic, unlike in them Harry Potters, is not a secret. So say 10% of us are magic, that means there are magic schools for us to go to, and then there's also this secret society that is based around the Library of Alexandria, where it turns out in the prologue, the Library of Alexandria is safe. Every bit of knowledge in that library has been contained and kept secret, as is knowledge from other lost civilizations and cities and cultures around the world throughout history. It's all been contained by this Society of Alexandria, or the Alexandrian Society, something like that. And this society, every 10 years, selects 6 really, really good magic people to be interred into their ranks, and they spend a year in this society studying things and getting to know each other and fucking each other and fighting each other and hating each other and loving each other and fucking each other some more. And then eventually at the end, one of them will not be allowed in. The selection process means that one must be eliminated and 5 will remain. And I think this is quite an interesting setup, because that means that you're going to get attached to 6 people. You're going to have your favourites, you're going to have your least favourites, and then you have to wonder who Olivie Blake will get rid of, who at the end you're going to have to say goodbye to. And you think, well, you're going to hate one of them, and I bet she doesn't get rid of that one. And you know it's going to be kind of interesting, and that did kind of carry me along as I went. Now, the world building is a problem, in that it has not really been thought out at all. There's a whole magic system. Every median, I think they're called medians, has their own power and is part of a kind of subcategory of magic user. And they're varied. Some of them can read people's minds or move things with their minds or summon things or travel places. They all have kind of X-Men-ish abilities. Some are really rare and some are not. The people who have been recruited into this society are either people with really rare gifts or are just the best at their subcategory of magic. When we begin the book, you have 2 who have the same power, and they're called physicists, but they're not physicists. They have the power to sort of manipulate material in different ways that is kind of whatever the plot needs it to do, to be honest. They went to the same school in New York City. They hate each other. They're a boy and a girl, and she has a boyfriend, and it's pretty obvious that these 2 fancy each other, and there's a lot of sexual tension because it's a YA novel. They hate each other and they argue and they fight and blah blah blah, and now they've both been recruited, and you kind of think, well, surely only one of them will move on forward because everyone else in this selection is unique, and these 2 have the exact same power and are already competitive. Therefore, one of them's got to go, right? That's what you kind of think all the way through. But then you meet all the others, and one of them is truly unlikable and awful, and you think, oh, well, if no one else likes him, maybe they get to vote him out or kill him. I don't know. I do now. I read it, but you think, okay, well, I guess he'll go. So there's a mystery, who's gonna go? There's only one. Now, since I'm on the topic of names, let's talk about how terrible they are. I wrote down on my list of notes, stupid fucking names. The names in this book are ultimate YA fantasy. They are the cringest possible names. You've got a character called Gideon Drake. Gideon Drake. Gideon Drake. One of the 2 physicists who hate each other, his name is Nico de Verona. The titular Atlas is a guy called Atlas Blakely, who is basically Colin Firth's character from The Kingsman. Yeah, The Kingsman. Another one of the recruits is called Tristan Kane. Like, these names, they're so edgy. They're so edgy. Tristan Kane, Gideon Blake. Oh, shut up. But they're entertaining. I'm tearing this book apart, but the point is I enjoyed all of this because it's so ridiculous. It's really fun to laugh at it, and you're clearly not supposed to be laughing with it. I'm not apologising. These names are dreadful. Then I wrote, compare it to death metal bands, brackets, but without the tongue-in-cheek. Right, this is kind of what I said at the beginning about how it's kind of like schlocky 80s horror films, but without the tongue-in-cheek. It's the same with metal bands. I listen to a lot of metal music. So for example, I've recently been listening to a death metal band called Cosmic Putrefaction, and they have songs like Amniotic Bewilderment, Crepuscular Dirge for the Blessed Ones. And this is all revolting and ridiculous, but it's all tongue-in-cheek. They know what they're doing. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be funny. It's not supposed to be serious. The Atlas 6 is that, but it takes itself seriously in terms of its tone and what the characters are saying, and again, the names. Everything is serious, and I don't think Olivie Blake realizes that she was creating something very cringe. But I love the cringeness. Like, I'm all in support of it. If I ever met Olivie Blake, I'd be thrilled. I'd thank her for what she's created here because it's been so much fun. The other thing I wrote down all in caps is, "You're having a laugh." So this is that bit from the IT Crowd where Moss is pretending to be one of the football lads, and he's like, you're having a laugh. You see that ludicrous display last night? And that happens here because some of the characters are British and Olivie Blake is American, and she's trying to write these British characters saying British things. And one of them at one point says, with an apostrophe to replace the G, "You're having a laugh." And I was like, oh, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. This book is just brainless fun. The magic system is not well thought out. Things don't make any sense. I also have to mention the fact that Gideon Blake, he's the best friend, I think, of Nico de Verona. And his mum is a spy, and she's the child of a mermaid and a faun. Is it a faun? Or whatever Sagittarius is. Whatever. A mermaid and some other magic Greek mythology creature had a child, and this child had a 25% chance of looking completely human for some reason, and what's his name again? Gideon Blake does look human. But I really wanted to be a fly on the wall during that conception, right? Like, who wouldn't want to see that kid getting made? But the problem is that it's never explained why Gideon's mum's parents, Gideon's parents are these magic creatures. Like, I don't want to talk about Harry Potter, fuck turfs, but in those books there is a kind of logical consistency as to why and how there are magic creatures from mythology. And that goes for most fantasy, but in this, it doesn't really explain how or where or why they just are. And there's not a lot of kind of consistency. There's no groundwork that's been laid down for the things that exist to exist. The magic powers, the magic systems, the schools, the creatures, the way that magic is interwoven into society. All of this stuff is not very well thought out. There's nothing concrete here. I also wrote that personalities drain away like paint or something. The characters are very archetypical of certain personality types, especially when you have a YA novel that's a group of young people, a group of teenagers, and you're going to have the sassy one and the grumpy one and the narcissistic one and the funny one and the clever one and there. It's all there. But as the book goes on, those personalities kind of drain away. It's like Olivie Blake kind of forgets which one is supposed to be the sassy one and which one's supposed to be the funny one, and they all kind of merge together, and it's like all of the colours start to run. There's no consistency, really. And you even kind of forget after a while which one comes from which country because she stopped doing the whole "you're having a laugh" thing. So they just kind of bleed into one another after a while. And then the last point I made was, it's mostly filler, but really horny, sexy filler, so that's okay. It's a very, very horny book. You've got 6 people who are all presumably very good looking. Like, there are 8 parts to this book, and every part starts with a sketch of one of the characters, and they're the most beautiful people that have ever existed. And good, great, let's read about sexy people being sexy, sure. But on this particular one, the side boob, she's an academic and she sat reading a book and she's looking angry and grumpy. Leave me alone, I don't want to read. But she's got this really sexy side boob. I love it so much. So these people are just fighting and fucking. That's what they do for most of the book. When they're not trying to, I don't know, figure out what they're doing there or making plans for the future or whatever. I honestly don't know how much I cared. It's just a lot of fighting and fucking and grand. Yeah, good. There were moments where I kind of zoned out, where I'd be reading a chapter and kind of going, this doesn't matter. I need to think about the fact that I need to make dinner later, and I would my brain would just wander. And then it would be brought back in after a few pages of just kind of gliding through the book. And 2 people are just having sex now. Which 2? I don't care. The Atlas 6 is glorious fun. It is so much fun. It's real bad. And I'm so grateful that I read it. I'm really glad that I had fun with it. It is a very frustrating book in terms of the fact that there are so many inconsistencies to the world building, to the character writing, to everything, literally everything. And there's a lot of cringe and awkwardness in it. But it's so much fun. It's so much brainless, chaotic fun, just like Maria said before I read it. It is just chaotic fun. And I knew it was going to be exactly this because the reason Maria sent it to me is because the sequel got announced, which is called The Atlas Paradox, I think. And it has a tagline that's something like, choose your destiny, or destinies can be chosen, or destinies can be broken. And I was like, that's not what destiny means. That literally is not what destiny means. And Maria was like, it's a paradox. And then we got into a fight about it. And then she sent me the book, and then I had to read it. And based on that, based on the paradox destiny bullshit, I knew what the Atlas 6 was going to be. And I was right, literally down to every detail. This is a perfect YA fantasy novel. In all of its glorious terribleness, it is a perfect YA fantasy novel. And I'm so glad I read it, and I had so much fun. And I'm probably going to read the Atlas Paradox for my sins. I really needed to read this. Before this, I read Wuthering Heights, which is the most draining thing, even though I adore it. And this was not draining. This was just pure, stupid entertainment. I am so glad I read the Atlas 6. Oh, that was fun. Subscribe for books.